Hello, everyone. If you live on the west coast of the United States or certain parts of Arizona, is my understanding, it's noon and it's Thursday, and that means it's time for the Nerd Log. And we've got a really good guest today. I am super excited about this. We have one guest this week because one guest is all we need. It is Ken from Speedscale, and it turns out I'm mirrored, so I'm going to point that. It is Ken from Speedscale. Ken, say hi to the people. Tell them what you do for Speedscale.
Hi, everybody. Ken Ahrens here. I'm one of the founders of Speedscale.
Love it. Love it. Okay, so we are not showing up as live on Twitch. So let's just take a look at that. Yay, there we are. We're live on Twitch. Fantastic. That matters because I want to be able to see the chat. Hello, Twitch chat. If you want to say something, I can now see it and make jokes about it. So that's good. So we're talking about Speedscale today. And, sometimes we're talking about things that are partnered with New Relic that have some kind of connection. And we're kind of trying to explain, here's why, there's a nice synergy here. Often hey, it's just kind of nice to get all your data, all your metrics in one place. So what is your users' behavior? Your people who are purchasing, bunny slippers from your company, what geography are they in? That kind of thing. It's hey, that's kind of useful. It's maybe not core to what New Relic is doing, but it's nice to have it all in one place. And I love having those partnership conversations. Speedscale is not that. Speedscale is if you're bought into New Relic, Speedscale is something you should be looking at. So tell us about Speedscale.
Yeah, cool. Thank you. So Speedscale, we're here to help around in the pre-production world, right? So obviously you use New Relic when you're in production. You want to monitor and get alerted when things are broken, get notified so you can fix them really fast. We're in the pre-production world trying to help you prepare as the application's making its way to production. And we focus around things like load and performance testing, things like ensuring that your APIs are working correctly. You didn't accidentally break a contract that's going to cause some kind of incident when you push that code to production. So we do this in a novel way through traffic replay. We actually capture the traffic that's running against your APIs, and then we replay it against the next version. And we make you, we check all the values and make sure this thing is going to scale. This thing, didn't break, doesn't have some kind of weird API change that's going to affect users. And then, of course, if you're doing that on purpose, it'll give you a heads up, hey, this thing is different. And you can say, that's fine, I'm shipping it anyway. But before you ship it to prod.
So I'd seen you talking about this ability. And by the way, if you haven't heard Speedscale at all, I did just drop the link into all of our co-broadcast directions. This is just speedscale.com, so it's not that hard to remember. This is something you kind of mentioned before, but it's kind of baking my noodle now that I think about it, where you're able to replay past API traffic as a new kind of incident, right? And see, hey, would the new API have responded hopefully better than before, but at least not worse?
Yeah, a lot of people think of this as a type of a testing, right? Hey, I'm testing my code, right? I have a unit test and I know my code didn't break. And obviously the thing you just worked on probably didn't break. But what happens is so many things are interconnected. You may not realize, I just changed this one little function over here, but it's called by something else. Somebody else relies upon it. And when you move to these microservice type of architectures, it tends to get a little worse, right? Your own code's easier to understand, but how it fits in with everything else is actually harder to understand. And so we focus a lot.
And this is a pretty basic thing, right? I talked about this before on the show, is that, if you feel like just at your org, you are running more microservices, and that is making you less capable of understanding failures, outages, poor performance. It's not just you, right?
Yeah.
So this is something that's affecting everybody. It's really great that we have this agility, but we need to be honest about the fact that, yes, it means that your little capsule of code is safer and better understood, and that's great. But a lot of us are running, 200 little microservices, counting every serverless function and maybe every little piece of gateway logic that's happening in between here and there. So just writing unit tests is not going to cover it.
Yeah, unit tests, unfortunately, they're testing your algorithm. You have to do them. Don't ship without doing unit tests, right? You should absolutely do it. But the kind of black box testing from the outside, that's where we specialize. And a lot of times, we're talking to folks and they say, "Oh, well, can I filter the data? Can I, because there's a lot of stuff going on." Guess what your app is going to face when you ship it to production?
Yeah.
It will be getting hit by a synthetic. There will be some customer that's using. I talked to somebody. He said he had a customer who's using 6-year-old version of the API spec.
Yeah.
Did you test with the 6-year-old version? No one even knew there was a version that old, right? So, but
Yeah.
when you
As an OG like Twitter like plugin developer, like you could be using something that you knew for a fact had not been touched in 9 years. And no one in the org knew that anyone was using. I mean, they sort of knew, yes, it's big enough that there's going to be some legacy users for anything we have out there. But the fact that like other big tools relied on these very old endpoints, they didn't know that.
people you don't know, and it's not the new thing that breaks. It's the old thing that breaks. So you make a code change, the old behavior that someone's relying upon broke. And so it's actually API traffic replay is kind of a messy thing. And it's purposefully messy because the real world is messy, production is messy, and you're able to recreate that production-like scenario, but do it in non-prod. And the other kind of thing about it is people say, well, I can do this by doing, I can use feature flags and say, let me sneak it in there and then just send a little bit of the traffic my way.
We'll canary test it. Yeah.
Canary deploys, right? Feature flags, turning things on and off. What if you want to try a bunch of different variations? And so we had a customer who tried like 8 different CPU architectures, and they were able to figure out which ones work and which ones don't. And if you're just doing these canary deploys and little tests, they said they did all of this in a couple of sprints, as opposed to
otherwise like 2 quarters of like trying it out. And I don't, I want to say here, I'm not going to rag on people who are testing on their users, right? Like the reason for feature flagging and for canary deployments is to test on your users in a way that is as low impact as possible, right? Like, you'll see very early if there are any failed requests at all. And of course, sometimes when you're talking to the head of sales, they'll be like, one user ever going to our site and having it be down is totally acceptable. I get that. But the reality is a lot of us, of course, de facto, we're testing on our users. It's much better to have a plan for easing back out of that than going to a postmortem and saying every time, oh, this will never, ever happen again because it broke for everybody. When we pushed it out, we were so sure it was going to work and it didn't work. We're so sorry. Right?
For sure, I think there's a good, it's a good practice to use canary deploys. It's one of the tools in the toolkit, and you should do it when you're kind of rolling things out, so you can roll them out slowly.
But this is about putting us in the situation where we've done something like integration testing pre-deploy, right?
Yeah.
Where we feel like we have a really, really strong indicator that none of the legacy stuff, none of the components is going to mess up.
Yeah. And let me tell you, one of the other things that we've learned as we've, been working on this problem we're constantly asking people about their testing. What do you think about your testing? Are you happy with your testing? And universally, people are like, no, I want more. I'd like more testing. I want more data. I want more confidence. And I say, hey, why do you not do things? And they talk about the CI environment where you're running tests, and they say, I don't have all my third-party APIs in there. I don't have sandboxes for everything. I turn off some of my tests. So we actually, part of what we do is we also simulate the downstream systems, and you can pick and choose and say, this is in scope for the test, or this is out of scope. And if it's out of scope, you see this is a third-party API called a Salesforce or to Google Cloud or AWS or some kind of service. It now can be included in your test plan.
So Yuka, I believe it's pronounced Yuka, asks on LinkedIn, and this might be a little out of scope of this tool, but it is kind of an interesting question. It's like, any way to shut down API features softly so that you could distinguish between proper legacy users really needing old functionality versus someone just banging on your doors to find weakness? First of all, congratulations on becoming a big enough service that people are trying to find weaknesses in your API. I'm not going to click through to your site, but it is real. It does happen. Do you have advice for someone in that situation where you're saying, hey, maybe you do this kind of testing. You say, look, we're spending all this time making these very old endpoints work. What's a way we can sort of softly ease back on them?
Yeah, definitely. What it sounds like, what I'm hearing you say is, I lack information. It's hard for me to know, can I turn this thing off?
Yes.
To anyone still using it? And a lot of the way that a lot of these tools work is they end up, producing pretty high level metrics, and at the high level, it can be hard to tell is someone using the old version of the schema and things like that. So ours is actually very deep level of data. We're telling you the full payload, all the query parameters, everything that's being used there, and then you can data mine that and figure out, is anyone actually using that? That data.
It's funny because Ken, you eased me into the answer that I would also give. So for your whole site and for pass through your site is, that observability is kind of the answer there. Where using Speedscale and also using New Relic and using things like New Relic distributed tracing, the attributes are going to be pretty big, right? Like,
exactly.
What's the organization attribute? What is the if you're like e-commerce, what's the total sale attribute? And if you're like, oh look, we get like thousands of requests a day through somebody whose total sale attribute is 0. Right? Like maybe we can say like, hey, yes, there's a bunch of people using Internet Explorer 5, but they are all something called, the orb out of Czechoslovakia, and maybe that's not really a user that we want to be supporting. That I love people. I know the Czechoslovakia doesn't exist anymore. I apologize for not updating my geography for jokes in the last 25 years. But so observability is really kind of part of the answer there, right? Because in this case, in the case that Yuka gives us, we know we have traffic on this endpoint, right? So we have sort of the first level observability, but we don't know if the traffic is valid. And so for that, things like decorating with parameters is going to be kind of key to finding a solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I feel like we might be teasing people a little bit because we're not showing them any stuff. We're not showing them any cool features. I want to talk about this more, but like I think we should at least start with one, like take a look at some Speedscale data, or take a look at the CLI that we're going to talk about, or whatever place you want to start.
Yeah, so it's interesting that you mentioned about API observability. So actually, let me share my screen here. Is this thing share the entire screen? Let's see if we can get this.
No worries.
Get this up and running. Are you able to see that?
Give me just a sec to load here on my view, and then I'll switch it live for everybody. Yuka says thanks. Interesting. Really appreciate that, Yuka. Glad you're enjoying. This looks good. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead. I'm looking at the GitHub for the CLI.
Yeah, totally.
So let's go ahead and share that.
So when we started working on this problem, we realized that there's a couple of steps to doing it. And so the first step is this API observability that we just hinted about. I want to know what calls what. And then the second step is that data analysis. Dig into the traffic and tell me more details. What are the inbound calls, the outbound calls, and all the URLs and parameters? And then the third part is you make it reusable. So you can replay inbound traffic, you can mock out outbound traffic. And so thinking about that first step, API observability, we recently, last month, carved off this use case and released a GitHub project. So github.com Speedscale, you can find it. And we're cleverly called it the CLI, command line interface. And the whole idea is for you to run this. We've designed it to run locally on your own machine, and it's kind of like you can wrap a black box with it and see all of the inbound calls that are going to one of your microservices, and then how the outbound calls work. Who are my backends that I call? What are the host names and URLs and all the HTTP headers and body and all that stuff. So we've just launched a community for this. You can join our Slack community. I've got my notifications muted at the moment, but this is freely available.
Please don't spam us with Discord messages, with Discord gifts, or please don't send us AOL Instant Messenger bots during the broadcast.
Yeah, no, I have my AOL Instant Messenger. Yeah, it's it's muted. So you can just download it. You can check out the install script if you want to see what it is, and then run it for Mac and Linux right now. and then initialize it on your own machine, and then you can follow one of the guides. And I'll sort of show you, just at a high level, the way that this works. So let's say, my own machine on my laptop, I'm running some app, and I want to get this Go proxy, is what we call it. Is we're going to launch that in a Docker container, and your app, your system under test app, you could either be running it in Docker if you use Docker, or you can run it standalone on your own laptop, and then we can interact with it through proxy, a HTTP proxy. If we do it through Docker, we use a thing called a transparent proxy. If we do it through when you're running it locally, then it's through a network proxy. And there's actually two proxies because there's one for the inbound traffic, and then there's another proxy for the outbound traffic. And I can show you what this looks like. So I've got a little Java app here, and actually, I'm gonna run this, but I'm configuring it to use the network proxy. I'm configuring it to use a key store. If you're familiar with Java, it's got its own way to
store keys,
to trust certificates.
Yeah.
So I can run that in this window. So it's my little Spring Boot app. It's up and running. There it is.
So the idea here is, this is this thing that of course really got me before we were working in after the microservice explosion, which is, I just can't stub out every little service that we're using. Even at the time, just the authenticator and maybe the business intelligence service that we had running, that plus the database, I was like, yeah, I can't stub all this out. And so that was a lot even then. Now, of course, we have way, way more components. It's like, yeah, my software is going to be calling out to all of these other points.
Yeah, you got it. So the first step though is to know what those other things are.
Yes.
Let me see here. So I've got a curl here. Thought I had it in my history. Localhost 4143. Let me see if that's okay. So I got a hello back. And
that's awesome. Ken, when you get a sec, will you turn up the brightness on your monitor? Because since we opened the nice black a terminal, it's making you look like a little bit like your requests are for $100 million, and you're gonna blow up a volcano. You're a little underlit. But if you can do it, fine. If not, don't worry about it.
I don't have a way to. I don't have a way to change that.
Oh yeah, no problem. It's probably hidden on your hideous touch bar, which we can blame for all the problems. Anyway, let's go ahead. Let's take a look at this thing. Let me zoom this thing in so we can follow along with the text.
So next, I'm gonna just run a login transaction. And when I hit the login transaction, my little Java app, it actually does some extra work. It's making a call to another system. And remember, behind the scenes, I've been collecting this API traffic, the stuff that's going inbound to my app, as well as Speedscale.
Oh, impact.
It's a typo.
Seems so close.
So you can see here the couple calls that I made. So first I did the call to the kind of hello endpoint, and I can hit this and see what were the request headers. Okay, obviously this was run by curl. You watched me type it or maybe typo it. There was no request body. It was a get call. Here's how the service responded, my little Java app running in the other window. And here's the response body, a little hello with a timestamp. So,
wow. Okay.
That's kind of interesting, but that was, I put a proxy right in front of my app, so that's not really earth-shattering. The second call is this login call, which looks real similar. We also saw what the output was in the terminal window, but down here you actually see it made a call to auth0, and I can actually see the outbound call from my Java app to auth0, including how I wrote this code. I used the auth0 SDK, so I don't know how it makes the call, right?
Yeah.
This is now
so your ability, if we weren't using a tool like this and just say, oh, I'll just write a stub to respond back and reset all the URLs by hand, like what you would have to start with Wireshark or something to even know like what on earth request was going out.
So Wireshark was an inspiration for us for this kind of thing. Well, a little kind of secret about Wireshark, you can't get in between, you can't use Wireshark for TLS traffic when the server is owned by a third party. If that worked, then everyone could hack all the banks and stuff, right? So that's part of why we have put this proxy in there with the certificates that you control that are on your own machine. So
that's very powerful. Right. Yeah. Of course, Wireshark's not going to help here with Auth0 requests.
It would show you that you made a call to some IP address. You could NS lookup and see it was Auth0, but you wouldn't be able to see the response. So, here's the response that came back. They're serving it through Cloudflare, I guess, including the response body that was returned back by Auth0. Now, again, this is a very trivial example. We returned to the same body, but build on top of this more and more and more of these kinds of calls, right? Oh, I depend on a call to Stripe. Oh, I use a AWS service like DynamoDB, or I use S3, or all of a sudden you have a lot of wires hanging out in your microservice.
No, it really is, the ease with which you can use a cloud-based service for a small component of your work. So, an example that comes up for me a lot is, maybe we don't even need these, right? But an example that comes up for me a lot, I'm going to send back our two up while we get ready for another screen share thing in a little bit, is, so it's just the two of us now on screen, in case you're following along, is like, hey, we do a bunch of like user analytics, and we want to look at every little behavior, including like hovering over the shopping cart tab. And initially, right back in the day, you would just be putting that into the production database, but you'll quickly find like that's not a great strategy, right? Frankly, if you stop collecting data on behavioral stuff, you'd be fine, right? That your business would still be in operation. But if you're not adding a database line for, hey, we just completed a sale, send this package to this person, right? You're effed, right?
Yeah.
So it just didn't make sense. So so you end up, well, we're going to do this. Then you realize, wait, no, there's this like data warehouse service. We can just use that. It's so much easier. And that has been happening for 10 years. There
are so many cloud services that are so useful, and they're cheaper for you to operate and run yourself. That's fantastic.
Yeah.
What happens is it's kind of like your applications are accumulating lint a little bit, right? And so, I make a call to this thing. No big deal, no problem. Except when you're in the pre-prod environment as a developer, you're trying to run something. Oh, my transaction doesn't run because I can't make the call to third-party Magic API because I don't have a non-product account with the correct credentials. Do you care about that? Not at the moment.
Yeah,
I'm trying to test my code.
Yeah. And I think realistically, we should say that I don't know of anybody there. Maybe there's a high profile Netflix one or something that I'm not aware of, who says, yes, we absolutely have a test environment that is connected to all this stuff, right? Where every single microservice is running, right, with a fairly recent version, and it's hooked up to a test version of our MongoDB. It's hooked up to a test version of this. It's hooked up to a test version of MariaDB and the 50,000 AWS services. And it is 100% accurate. There's no stubbing at all. That's just not the reality that people are working in, right? So a tool like this is going to be necessary for almost everyone. And I think we all know that for a lot of us, we just don't really have anything like this at all. We don't have anything to do a real full like smoke test to our whole API.
You got it. Remember your comment before about the 200 microservices, right? So you got 200, 500 microservices. The other thing is you and I might both own different microservices and we both want the environment at the same time. And you've put your experimental new thing, totally okay. I make a call to your new experimental API endpoint and I get an error. I can't actually complete my work because you and I are stepping on each other.
And you hear back, oh yeah, sorry, we're using tests to test this thing. It's going to be 3.5 weeks and then it'll be working again. So you end up stubbing your own stuff. You end up stubbing stuff from inside your own shop.
You got it.
I worry I glossed over one point. Now the Speedscale CLI, it's $20,000 a user, right? And then it's another $8,000 a month is my understanding of the pricing.
No,
I apologize, Ken. This is a free open source tool.
I was like, what?
This is something you can just try. You can go get it. I linked to the GitHub here, right? Yeah.
Yeah. This is free, right? So we've been, we have a beefed up cloud service version with a bunch of bells and whistles and a lot of, and we'll take care of storage and running it. But this CLI I just showed you, it's a free, a free product, right?
And I want to take a minute to talk about this a little bit. Something I'm actually really fascinated with is, there was this kind of old school way that, a startup or whoever could try to do open source, which was like, hey, we add on to this open source thing. Like, how are we going to make money? Don't worry about it, Whereas I love things like this because this is, hey, here's a tool. It's clear that this is going to be free forever, right? Like, it's clear that this is just like running on your own machine. It doesn't really even make sense how you would be like subscribing to it, right? It's open source. And so, one of the things that's so powerful that I get to talk about now with New Relic is these agents are open source. They're a great way to gather data. You can totally do it in test. Once it comes time to measure absolutely everything everywhere, and you don't want the headache of running, a data warehouse and a query and a dashboard and all this stuff, come see us at New Relic, right? We'll help you do it. But, that's such a nicer way to actually be embracing open source, is to say, hey, I'm going to continue to make free open source contributions to a tool that you can run yourself, right? And if you are just, if you have the resources to spend on this full time, great. Just go, keep using my tool. That's fantastic. But then, of course, what Speedscale presents as a whole business is that it's great to be able to test this stuff locally, to set up this proxy stuff, but it's also really nice to have, a service that is going to help make this easier for a whole org. So can you talk a little bit about that? Can you talk about like the Speedscale value proposition on what you actually do for your users?
So what our cloud service does is, remember I mentioned kind of the first step is the visibility, which I just showed you. The visibility, we think, just like New Relic has open source their agents, right? Collecting data that, we want to try to make that available for free, right? That you can get visibility locally. Now, the second step is, when I run it on my own machine, I don't generate a ton of traffic. Yeah. When I hook this to a Kubernetes cluster that's running in a very busy environment, it throws off an enormous amount. I know because my my notifications go crazy sometimes, and something's fallen over because of load and scale, right? So we take care of the storage for large environments where you can have this on all the time. And then the second part is you can grab big chunks of traffic and have us run analyses across them, and then automatically build the mocked out API endpoints for you and automatically build out basically a whole test suite for you.
Yeah.
And then when you rerun those, we also will give you really nice reports, side-by-side diffs that show you exactly what changed in the environment, and let you integrate that with your CI system so that you can say, plug it into this environment and have it kind of kick back into pre-prod, basically test cases, test suites, right? We call it the sandwich, by the way. We're sandwiching your microservice with inbound traffic into outbound mocks.
Yeah, that's a pretty good analogy for it. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
And then no one wants to sit down and look at reports. You just hook it to the CI system and then tell us when it's broken, right? So, hey, we get a notification. CI system's always complaining something's broken. And then you go in and look and you go, oh, it is broken. Yeah. Right. So I remember one of our first customers, when we first started to pilot this, we got the sandwich running, and it goes, oh, okay, yeah, it was cool. But this thing said, it said that this unique ID was different. You guys need to ignore it. And I was like, oh, okay, let's double check. And I looked and I said, no, your thing is broken. And he goes and looks at his code, and he said, that's been in the code base for 3 years. We returned the wrong API. We returned the wrong ID to a bunch of our customers, and they have to refresh their browser. Oh, that's why. Yeah.
Yeah. Let me tell you, the number of bugs, like, again, from doing like not API hacking, but just, trying to build, goofy little stuff via, public APIs. The number of times you're like, oh yeah, that's not right.
Yes.
I remember there was a couple years where the older Twitter endpoints were returning ints for IDs after they'd overflowed. And so, like, any JavaScript application that received them would just you'd had to go in and right as you received them, rewrite them over to string literals.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they would overflow and not be correct. And everything would work fine. Everything would look so fine until you like realize you're just loading like gibberish, like the wrong, off by 64 million tweet IDs. It's like, oh, that's not great.
Yeah,
it took them a long time to update it. So
and it's hard to find those things because who digs around in the APIs? The APIs are kind of like, it's the plumbing, right? Who goes and digs around in the plumbing and says, hey, is this hot water in here? Is this thing working? But if you have something that plugs right into the plumbing and tells you, hold on, you got hot water going through the cold water pipe. But that's kind of what we're doing for you.
Yeah. And it really is, for all of our changes, in the last few years and the stuff that teams take more ownership of now, that the API is working perfectly. We really do use it's not quite to the users, right? It's usually to the partners or wherever else, right? Or the other teams in our org. But it really is, no, we don't usually guarantee that those are working.
Yeah.
Right? We guarantee the code we just wrote works, right? It passes the unit test. But we really don't, as a sort of tech scene, we don't say, hey, every single endpoint in our API works exactly as described in the documentation.
So I think what used to happen a lot is people would sit down and go through a test cycle, 2 weeks, 4 weeks, we'd build a bunch of test cases, right? Or we would have the ones from the previous run, or we'd run a big load test, and no one's going to wait 4 weeks for this thing to get released. So just finish the code. Hey, can we release it? Are we going to release it today or tomorrow?
Yeah.
That's the question that you're asking, right? Am I going to hit the button? Is it going to automatically get released when I check my code in? And so...
and in fact, on a bad day, hey, Dave's taking a helicopter over to present this tomorrow morning. It'll be deployed, right? Like
it'll be deployed
4:30 p.m. It'll be deployed, right? By then,
that's never happened right before I got on a live stream or anything. So you need something that can do that checking for you without a bunch of human intervention, and so. Because we're already integrated with that environment, that's kind of where our cloud service comes in. It's already connected in. You're already getting, we call them snapshots generated, and then the replays are run. And then you can just programmatically ask the system, did that pass, fail? Did that meet my thresholds? Yeah. And that's actually where we have done our integration with New Relic is we have, so I caught up with some of the New Relic folks when I was at KubeCon. In October down in LA. I was like, hey, we're going to have some face-to-face events. And we flew out and we saw the New Relic crew out there. And they said, hey, we launched this instant observability platform and anyone can build on top of it. And it's based on our existing APIs like NRDB and the metrics endpoint. And I said, hey, I think that's pretty simple for us to publish data in. And so we released in December an instant observability plugin.
This is just music to my ears. Back when I was first at New Relic, we would announce partnerships, and that was, thank you to all the late night pizzas, to all the teams that worked on it. 3.5 months, we figured it out. We did the authentication, we got all the paperwork. And now, you're about the third guest who's come on and said, yeah, well, I saw something about it. And then, doing the math, it's like 5 weeks later, it was working.
Yeah.
For some people, it's like, hey, it was working immediately the first weekend we tried it out. And then we tweaked it. And now it's ready. And that's, the embracing of some open standards with how we receive data makes this like so much easier.
There's a bunch of things that made it really clever. So one thing is all of this on the New Relic side is open source. So the instant observability is one big repository where all the partners can go and put their things in there. And then it's built systematically around, a couple YAML files, dashboard exports. So you can literally hit the export right in the New Relic GUI and save it on your machine and check it in. And it was pretty painless to get built. And then the cool thing is anyone, when they're logged into New Relic, can just hit the add instant observability, the install wizard. They get our dashboard automatically put in their account and it's populated with the Speedscale data in it.
So. Why don't we take a look at some Speedscale data in the New Relic, and then I guess we'll walk into this backwards. We'll take a look at it in the New Relic side, but also I want to see the Speedscale interface, for your own cloud users. But Yeah, this part is really important to me is that, first of all, so many people have implemented New Relic instant observability projects just kind of on their own in a very tiny little spike in a single sprint. But then also that I get to say, hey, just go and search here by this name and you can find it. Or go and search, API monitoring, API security, and you'll see something related to it. And I love that because that was the other piece that I always hated about announcing integrations was it was never, hey, just go do it. It was always, oh, well, you got to talk to your sales rep and see if you're, qualified, and then we'll release this beta feature, and it'll be a request that goes all the way to the dev team to actually even get you access. In this case, it's like it's first class, right? It's actually in the interface, which I makes me feel so much more confident being like, oh, if you want to do a New Relic partnership, like now's the time to pursue it.
Yeah, it's super simple. Can you see the screen?
Yeah, I'm just maximizing it so we can see all the instructions. So this is instant observability. If you haven't already seen it, folks, really powerful way to just add new data. Especially, it's a great place to look if you're already using another cloud service and you're like, hey, I wonder if I can get New Relic data in there or that data into New Relic. This is the place to start.
There's tons of these already, which also as an author and I wrote the integration for us. Seeing existing ones is helpful. I kind of looked at the Lacework one, the Gigamon one to see examples of what the data looks like. You can come and see a screenshot of what the data looks like, and as a user, all you have to do is hit this and install Quick Start, which I've already done. And it drops the dashboard in. So in my New Relic One account, then obviously I start my Speedscale reports dashboard. But you can see, and of course, if you have questions, you just get our email address here. But you can see, okay, what services were I using? I don't know how to speak English correctly, but what were the services?
Talking? Well, let me check the tape. I think we're at we're about to get to 40 minutes, which is the point when you start saying things like, so at speed.
Yeah, exactly. So
sorry, go ahead.
We know the services, like maybe I care about, the payment service in particular. I can filter down to that. And then I can see what snapshots. This is a user. Obviously, you can put your own name into the name of the snapshot. That's a Speedscale, concept. But I can see here, I ran against payment a couple times recently, and one had a 98% success rate, and it passed. But actually, this one had like a 50% success rate. It missed its goals. We have a concept of a build tag, so you can integrate it with your CI system. So you have traceability back to what code change did I make that caused this thing to be 50%.
And then that one is, again, something that would have seemed so asinine 10 years ago or whatever, 5 years ago. But, you now have a lot of teams deploying in a lot of places. So the question of, hey, this is a change that happened on Tuesday at 8:09 p.m., you really want to have that tag because there really might have been two teams that were deploying code out at that exact moment.
You'd be stunned at how many changes there are in your repositories. It's not that much. I only have a few developers on this service, and there will be hundreds and thousands of changes. And when you move to GitOps, I know we didn't talk about GitOps, but that's actually how a lot of our replays are kind of orchestrated. When you move to a GitOps architecture, you have bots that are integrating with your CI as well. And they do kind of both directions, right? So we've made a change, and now we're reflecting it. What change we made on the infrastructure, we're reflecting back into the repo. So you can't just go and say, give me the latest thing. That might not be the change that was related to this version of the code.
Yep.
So I've kind of clicked through from the New Relic dashboard into Speedscale now because I care about why this thing had a 50% success rate. And on our home screen of our report here, we're kind of focused on the SRE golden signals of, latency, the capacity of the service, the throughput, the saturation, like the infrastructure metrics, CPU and memory, and the success rate or the failure rate, whether you're an optimist or a pessimist, I guess. And in this case, it's failing because the success rate, like 50%, is pretty bad.
Really, kind of whichever you call it, 50% is not great.
It's not great. I actually don't know what happened here.
I will tell you my favorite stats fact, which is that in kind of folk, sort of general public understanding of stats, there's a great dislike of any prediction that is 50%. So this actually plays through to the National Weather Service, its API. When it gives you rain, it gives rain in percentages, like precipitation percentages. It does not give 50%.
Yeah.
Because like it only gives 45 and 55% because the Weather Channel or whoever gets letters saying, what do they say? They say, that's just like tossing a coin.
Yeah, that's a
40% chance of rain, fine. Could happen, likely, but not definite. 55, okay, got it. 50%, no, I don't like that.
That's funny, and I have no one to blame because I wrote a lot of these demos too. So I'm like, why does this fail 50%? I don't know. But this is the side-by-side diff that I mentioned, right? Where I was expecting to get some kind of access token. You may notice this little kind of ignored guy. We're showing you the value on the left that we recorded originally.
Yeah.
And then the value on the right was when we did the replay. This is the response from the system under test. So instead of getting an access token, I got an invalid password. So obviously, that's why this, there's something wrong with the authentication. With this, the whole, all of these are bogus. That's why these are failing. But this gives you this deep visibility. If you've used a lot of testing tools, which I guess I'm a bit of a testing nerd, they tend to give outputs like 987 tests out of 20,000 failed. Okay. What?
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah, no, this is the thing with Errors Inbox that is so big where, for Errors Inbox, even if this is a New Relic feature, even if you're working with an application that you control and run unit tests on, just the way it's presented matters. And you can see this here too. Just the grouping up of like, hey, a bunch of these errors have the same code attached to them. Right?
You got it. So we have these different kinds of assertions. This is, now that I think of the Errors Inbox, I mean, it's a very similar concept. We don't have as many attributes, right? So we just have a few in here, but what was the type of assertion or what, which assertions failed, which endpoints were having problems out of all of the endpoints. And so we kind of roll it up, but then we let you drill down all the way into an individual call. You can even download just this, we call it a request response pair, just the request response pairs for this transaction. So you can see how they, how they work. And that download format, that's the same format as the CLI.
Well, and this is such a critical thing because, when I try to explain like what these kinds of like testing pieces do, I mean, our hope is that New Relic grows into something that developers use pre-deploy in the next year. And obviously this is a tool that we'd hope that we have some developers using, but we're also going to have SREs and operations people using it heavily. And for them, a feeling that they can easily pick up a synopsis of what is happening, that they can forward around is so nice. Because again, once your team gets big, just saying, hey, users can't check out from the shopping cart service. Well, that could be a lot of people. You're going to wake up a lot of people trying to hunt down that error. It's important. Of course, you're going to hunt down that error because you're not making money. But, if you can say, hey, the service is sending back this response, and admittedly, like bad auth, it's still going to touch a few people, right?
Yeah.
But at least when those people there's my thing. When those people get pinged, they're going to look at that, JSON object that you're dropping into chat or wherever, and they're going to be like, yeah, it makes sense that you bothered me about this.
So we're trying to cut down on the old, hey, it works on my machine, kind of thing. I can't see that, right?
Can somebody turn off the office Wi-Fi, get off their VPN, and send a request? And can someone else VPN to France to try and see if Paris is experiencing this? Yeah.
And we want things to be automated as much as possible. So we're expecting people are doing this in their CI system, right? And the CI system, if you've ever looked into logs of, GitHub Actions or Jenkins logs or, GitHub or GitLab CI/CD, it's a bunch of text, and it can be hard to tell what's going on. And we need to marry that text with this deep context. Right. So sure, I have a list that's telling me something's gone wrong, but now I can click in here and I can get the real detail. I expected a skew. I'm getting a skew error lookup. Right. So clearly there's something wrong with this new version, and we know what it is. And a lot like New Relic, everything's got kind of a deep link, and we can always keep coming back to this report. So This is what you get with our cloud service is the visual reports. We store all the data for you for 13 months. And then similar to that traffic viewer that I showed kind of locally running on my own machine, we have a traffic viewer that is built into the web GUI that's got some nice web look and feel. So I can see here all the various calls that the system's making right now. And that same kind of view of here's the full request response. Our CLI was patterned off of our GUI after, our web UI after we got a lot of feedback that this is a good look and feel that people understand and makes sense to them.
Yeah, I really like it's a lot more readable than I think I would have expected. And so that's just such a common experience is feeling like, the information's there, but it's hidden, right? Like,
yeah.
I've talked a little bit about situations where your instrumentation is actually pretty good, but your observability is still not high because you're looking at a million log lines. The information's there, right? Just grep until you find it, right? But that's not, you don't have great insight into what is currently going on. Yeah. So
and
I think
and this is also, kind of having been also a bit of a monitoring nerd over a lot of my career, right?
Mm-hmm.
I love logging and logging is fantastic. And it's the lowest barrier to entry to get data. Log lines also to get really good data in it is hard. It's very easy to say, Ken's worried about this variable value and then print it out. But getting something that's understandable that I can download and share with other people, copy it into a curl statement and curl from my own machine, this makes it much more approachable, specifically for API traffic. So we think of ourselves as kind of a logging system of all the APIs itself. So,
yeah, and this is why AWS is saying, hey, if you're doing logging, it needs to be structured logging, right? Because you have to have some ability. Essentially, right, what this is, right, is that one could build this from logs as long as the logs had structure that you could act off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, I had a customer who said, "Hey, we totally understand your problem. We built it ourselves, and we have all this logging data, and we use it, and we replay it against the thing. It's just too much work for us to go and maintain. And after a year of building it, we didn't get very far." They migrated over to Speedscale within a couple of weeks, and they go, okay, we didn't need the homegrown system. And so that there's always this sort of trade-off with, hey, open source, I can go and build things. I myself love open source. And if it turns into a big problem, you want to know there's other options available. So yeah, that's a little bit about our kind of cloud offering. We offer free trials, and then the New Relic integration is included with that. But again, the CLI, we definitely want to try to have a free capability for anyone to be able to get this kind of, almost like a debugger for your APIs. Turn the lights on. What does it call? What are all the details on it? And then, do whatever you want with that data, right? Use it in your unit tests. We do that like crazy. So we call them RR pairs. We take the RR pair and we check it into source control, and then we use that as the data for a bunch of our unit tests, all the kind of plumbing related unit tests. Yeah,
that's powerful. Yeah,
so
that you can see how the better tooling doesn't just improve you today, but like hopefully lets you build something that's bulletproof like in the near future.
Yeah, so that's a couple of the things that we were excited about. This has been really top of mind in the last couple of weeks. Frankly, I mean, to your point about how quick we built it, I think we spent longer going back and forth on some paperwork. Not really, actually. By the way, the paperwork was super simple.
But yeah, it's the fact that we're not spending a long time just trying to make something technically work, discussing something before we even know if we can get this data to connect. It's nice, right?
It's really nice.
It's a real benefit. So I haven't emailed you about it yet, but Ken, I am going to invite you to join the Containers meetup to come and talk some more about this, to demo the CLI in detail. Yeah. So I'm just going to drop the link to that meetup where we talk about containerized workloads, talk about monitoring, and also especially how people can get in who have maybe worked with more traditional IT structures and how they can learn and expand a little bit. So folks feel free to click that link. We do come back with an Nerd Log every Thursday, but I have an important question for you, Ken, which is, when it comes to social media or the internet, where do you want to be found?
Where do I want to be found on social media? I mostly use LinkedIn. I think I signed up for LinkedIn when it started, and that was where I ended up. That's where I kind of built my networks out. So that's a great place to.
We see. By the way, thank you so much to our viewers on LinkedIn. I as somebody who my whole career was as a software developer, I had really shunned it for a long time just because I didn't have the kind of conversations that I really loved. What I realized is that a lot of people who are deciding what technology their team is going to use are on LinkedIn. And so there's a ton of curiosity. When we have an episode like this, we've had 20, 30 people in this whole episode on LinkedIn because they just, people want to know, they're thinking about the problems they have. Will this tool work, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thank you so much, LinkedIn viewers. This stuff will stay up on LinkedIn as a recorded video. So if you're watching this recorded, thank you so much. But yeah, so I dropped in your LinkedIn. I hope you get a few dozen connection requests from some very committed New Relic users. But other stuff you want to mention? Do you have a depot pop shop where you're selling vintage Motley Crue T-shirts that you want people to check out? You have haunted dolls you sell on eBay that you'd like people to maybe
No, this is it. All I do all day long, I think about APIs. I think about how do we deploy it on Kubernetes. It's funny you mentioned about containers. I've been using containers for forever. This is kind of my thing. I like geeking out on. I'm interested in time series data. It seems kind of silly.
That's what I think about a lot. And in fact, folks, if you did not check out Brian Galeno's talk on the Nerd Log about time series aggregation methods, boy, that title doesn't sell it, but I promise it is the most fascinating thing. The reality of trying to make a decision about, hey, this alert is happening now, right? Your throughput just dropped by this much in this time bucket. Oh, I love it so much.
When we were building that GUI, this is a finished product. And at one point, the aggregation of one of the metrics was incorrect. And I was like, hey, you accidentally aggregated an aggregate without taking the original measurement into account. And our front-end engineer was like, I'm not sure I followed. And I was like, we're going to fix it on the back end.
That's so real. Oh my God. I remember for a year, actually the time aggregation thing got me to work at this. I started out in tech support at New Relic. I would get these calls where someone had, this was way back in the day when it was a much simpler product. They had, hey, throughput is 10,000, 10,000, 10,000. It's 9 a.m. 8:59 p.m. it just dropped to like 2,000. Right? Start running around, start pinging people. There's Super Bowl ads playing right now, so they're very, they're very conscious, right? Refresh. 8:59, 10,000. 9 a.m., 10,000. 9:01 dropped down to 2,000 again.
Yeah.
Where'd that tip go, right? They're hitting refresh. They've got the time window set to last 2 minutes, 3 minutes or something. And I had to explain, well, we're not done with that time bucket. We're still getting reports and we're still putting it together. And someone was like, well, how could you prevent this? And I was like, I believe that this is like a pure computer science problem. I don't think that there's, and it's like, I know you don't want to load the interface at 9:05 a.m. and only see data going to 9 a.m., right?
Yeah.
Which is the simple way to solve it. Now we do a number of things to improve this quite a bit. And now you can configure it. So it doesn't even happen by default anymore. But I loved that stuff. I loved to dig into that the first time.
That's a very hard problem. And actually, we faced that exact problem in an early version of our GUI. Had some things grayed out. So it's gray. We think something's there, but we're not done processing it yet.
Yeah.
We actually ended up reordering our processing of how we show some of the data. But that's a real problem, and data ingest of a lot of stuff. Right? Anyway, that's why New Relic has a big cloud service, and we have a cloud service that's emerging and growing. Because we take care of some of the scale problems.
This is the thing I really emphasize when we talk about integrating an open source strategy and a cloud service strategy, is that you mentioned it, and it really is true. A lot of this is if you are feeling gung ho about this thing and you want to go and build your own dashboard and your own metrics aggregation and your own analysis tool and your own report system and your own alerting system, we can make that a lot easier with these open source tools, right? We're not claiming that we're hiding some magic special code that makes the job a treat. It's just that there's some advantages of scale because we do this for a whole lot of users.
Yep.
So we handle a lot of edge cases. So you're not going to end up with bugged out dashboards or whatever else. But yeah, that's not something that's automatic. And so, it's like you're putting the power in users' hands and you're also presenting them with like, hey, if you don't want to walk up all these stairs and you want to take the elevator, it's right over here, right? And that, to me, that's kind of where you want to be.
That's totally right. And I think especially if you want to make things approachable to people, you've got to ungate it. You want to learn about monitoring. There's open telemetry. Go in there, and go instrument your app and see what the traffic looks like, right? You want to see a log message. There's free logging tools you can load stuff into, right? So you start hitting scale limits, then look around, right? There's a lot of
probably buy a service, but until then you can go and see what this stuff does. Yeah, it's not the secret sauce stuff. That actually I really love. There was an article about cybersecurity being a quote market for lemons. That was really, really fascinating. It's in The Economist 2 months ago now. If you go search for like cybersecurity and market for lemons, you can read that one. It was really, really fascinating. Okay, on that super nerdy point about an economics paper that was covered in an arch-conservative British newspaper. That I think is it. Come back for the Nerd Blog every Thursday. Ken sadly can't rejoin us every single Thursday, but hopefully we'll be back in a year talking about cool new integrations with Speedscale. Check out Ken's LinkedIn. Check out the links to Speedscale down below. And come back next Thursday. If you're watching this on YouTube and it's not Thursday, don't worry, you haven't come stuck on time. You're not experiencing some sort of Billy Pilgrim-like schismatic break. It's just you're watching a pre-recorded version, which I think you probably know. But every Thursday we make a new episode. This will go up on YouTube early next week. And thanks so much for coming out, everybody.
Awesome.